just realized. Joining us now, Rebekah Koffler, a former Defense Intelligence Agency officer and the author of Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America. Rebekah, good to have you back with us.
Thank you.
What do you believe is going on?
What's going on is President Trump is aiming to fulfill his campaign promise to end this bloody war and not to get the United States entangled in any more endless foreign wars. And when it comes to Russian President Putin, he wants to end this war as well, but only on Russia's terms, on Putin's terms, which are unacceptable to Washington. They have been unacceptable because to accept Putin's terms would make us look like total idiots, because here's the situation that Trump inherited from the Washington establishment, which has pursued for a quarter of a century the most ridiculous Russia policy by trying to democratize the countries that belong to Russia's perceived strategic security perimeter. You know, Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, just like we have the Monroe Doctrine, Putin has his own, right? And so the situation that we are in, the United States, is we've spent $200 billion in cash and in weapon systems, out of which only about $71 billion, according to Zelensky, made it to Ukraine. So who knows what the rest of the U.S. taxpayers' money went.
Of course.
We have depleted our own weapons arsenal to dangerous levels when it comes to specific weapon systems. And 1 million of the, between the Russians and Ukrainians are dead, 50% of Ukrainian infrastructure destroyed. And right now, Ukraine is going to get a worse deal than it would have had that war never been started. That the Washington establishment, the neocons, and all of those, you know, people, I basically, you know, I call it professional malpractice. Whoever got us in this situation, right? And that's what's going on. It's going to be a hard one. That President Trump has done tremendous job, and his team getting Mark Fogel out. But it is in no way an indicator that the negotiations to settle the Ukraine conflict are going to be easy. They're going to be super hard. Putin is going to play a very, very hard ball because he believes he's in excellent position, and he believes that Trump wants peace in Ukraine bad, more so than Putin himself does.
But the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, you know, you and I both know he's not just freelancing when he goes out there and he says that no, Ukraine is not going to join NATO. And by the way, it's foolish to think, he said this today too, I didn't play the audio, but it's foolish to think that you're going to somehow restore Ukraine's boundaries to the 2014 levels. He said that's not happening. And so I don't think the Secretary of Defense comes out and just says that unless there's some bigger conversation happening behind the scenes. Am I wrong?
I think you're absolutely correct. We are right now in the era of common sense, and it applies to Trump's military strategy and all other kinds of strategies, domestic policy, you name it, right? So, but what they inherited is the wishful thinking type of the results of the wishful thinking policy. No, Ukraine is not going to become part of NATO, right? So Hegseth finally said the common sense, the reasonable thing. But the question is then, why did we do it in the first place? Why did we have to invest all of this money that we could have invested in our own country? And why is Ukraine now destroyed? So basically, Biden and his incompetent, you know, advisors have blood, Ukrainian blood, on their hands by pushing Ukraine into NATO. And effectively, they used Ukrainians as a human shield to protect the Europeans who did not want to pay for their own security.
Well, and also,
right? They didn't.
And also, to what extent were they merely protecting the meddlesome American foreign policy establishment? So if you go back to 2014, I don't know if you and I have talked about this, but I'm curious about your thoughts. about the role that the American government pushed in the Maidan Revolution in 2014, which changed the government of Ukraine from one that was obviously much closer to Russia to one that was designed to be aligned with the United States. To what extent did that serve as a predicate to so much of the chaos we're seeing now?
It's 100% the predicate. Victoria Nuland, the queen of the color revolutions, is the primary culprit that dragged us into this proxy war with Russia that was from the very start unwinnable for Ukraine. And I've been saying it for the past 3 years, and at the risk of being like no longer invited to all the legacy media, right? Because people just didn't want to hear the truth. Remember all these, stupid little blue and yellow Ukrainian flags, and people just kept saying how Ukraine is going to win. Well, there's just another level of complete misunderstanding of the mismatch between the combat potential, right, of Russia and Ukraine is just so drastic.
And it's possible
the media people.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just think it's one thing to remember.
Not understanding this, but
yes.
not the Pentagon. The Pentagon. Somebody must be fired for the fraud of abuse of our money, $200 billion, and somebody should be fired for Ukraine being destroyed, for throwing Ukraine in Putin's meat grinder.
Yeah. So this is my point is that I think it's both entirely appropriate to condemn Putin for invading Ukraine and simultaneously condemn the American foreign policy establishment for destabilizing the region in the first place. And talk about what an unwise and deadly decision. How much human catastrophe has occurred in that region? We get all sorts of numbers. We over 1 million casualties. That typically means killed and wounded. How do you assess it, Rebekah Koffler?
So I agree that the casualties probably are on the order of more than 1 million, right? And that includes both dead and gravely wounded. Those are people who will no longer join the labor pool, and they're going to be a massive drain on the healthcare system, right? But the point is this: so it's extremely difficult to nail down with any degree of accuracy the exact casualties, because they just don't do, neither Russia nor Ukraine do the actual type of record keeping that we do, and also they try to conceal both sides. But regardless, 1 million is plenty. These are European, age, young males, child-producing males who are out, who are dead, and 50% of Ukrainian infrastructure is destroyed, and that is according to the United Nations itself. And so what we're in right now, because the BlackRock and all of these other, vultures are now hungry to rebuild Ukraine, and that's again some of it is going to come at the U.S. taxpayers' expense.
Mm-hmm.
Because Trump, hopefully he's going to compel the Europeans to take on this responsibility and stop just to remind you, I personally briefed NATO in Brussels in September 2013, just a few months in the run-up to Putin's invasion of Crimea, and at the classified level, it explained very, very clearly what Putin's goals were, his ambitions, the warfighting strategy that I described later in my book at the unclassified level called Putin's Playbook. And yet nobody wanted to lift a finger, because guess what? They preferred to drink their cappuccinos and spend 3 months vacationing on Rivieras than contributing 5%, 5% of their GDP to defense, which is what Trump insists on right now.
Right.
Justifiably so, because they cannot take us for suckers anymore. I mean, why are we paying for everyone's security? Like, we don't have 3 months vacation.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So what does the deal in the end potentially look like? I saw earlier this week that Vladimir Zelensky is indicating that he's willing to do a land swap with Russia. It would be foolish to read into that he means he's giving up Ukrainian territory. What he means by that is that he's ready to swap some of the land that Ukraine currently dominates in the Kursk region of Russia, and saying, hey, we'll give you that control of that back. But Russia has seized big portions of eastern Ukraine. What does a final deal look like in your view?
The final deal is definitely not going to favor Ukraine. I mean, Zelensky is irrelevant at this point. He's just a clown because the Russians are not going to negotiate with him. He's illegitimate. His presidential term expired several months ago. Putin himself said, and you have to be able to read between the lines. When Putin says something, you cannot take it at face value, right? So that's why you need to apply intelligence analysis, tradecraft to really understand what he says. Putin said, we will negotiate with anyone who has the legitimate and legal right to negotiate, and that is not Zelensky. So the Russians are going to insist on the elections being held, which they're going to try to influence. Right. So Putin is trying to score some brownie points with Trump, right? He's getting tremendous propaganda out of it. The Russian media is just exploding with praising Russian President Putin and how he is repairing the relations with President Trump. Putin, all of a sudden, he's no longer the killer and the brutal dictator. He's a statesman who has a soul, and he feels bad for Mark Fogel. This is what's going on right now. But he's going to drag all of this in order to get exactly the deal that he wants. And he believes that he's in excellent position because he beefed up his armed forces to the maximum allowable, even beyond the maximum allowable by the Constitution, 1.3 million. And his military-industrial complex is working 24/7 in 3 shifts because Putin transitioned it on a wartime footing. So he could go on for years, right? But he knows that the hot button for President Trump and his team is to end this war quickly. President Trump wanted to end it in 24 hours, okay? It ain't going to happen. And so right now, again, Trump is no rookie either. He's a talented negotiator, but he's not a magician. He inherited an awful, terrible situation with the previous, like I said, incompetent people. And I'm glad that he revoked his their security clearances, Jake Sullivan, Joe Biden, because these people, just like an attorney, must lose. Sometimes attorneys lose their licenses to practice. Doctors do for professional malpractice.
Yes.
I believe that entire team, both Biden and beginning with the Bushes, right? Because who pushed Ukraine into all of this? Who wanted to democratize? And who, Condi Rice kept saying, oh, Putin is a rash, he's delusional. I mean, who is delusional here? Who does not understand what a Monroe Doctrine is, right? So you have to be sensible about things. And finally, we have a sensible commander-in-chief, but he is going to have to deal with the situation that he inherited from the idiots who were in charge of foreign policy, of U.S. foreign policy.
Yeah, he's got to try to do something big here with a bad hand. He wants to pull an inside straight. We'll see if he can do it. Rebekah Koffler, thank you very much. Good to talk to you today.